been waiting all week for that Saturday show. Tune in, see what happened, let your troubles go. Work real hard, now it's time to take it slow. Kick back and relax with that Saturday show.
Welcome, Albuquerque. This is Jim Harvey, your host, and I'm joined by our director, Tom Dent, for another episode of That Saturday Show. It's Saturday, June 19th. We're right in the middle of Juneteenth, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But we are happy to be coming to you today from the studios of the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice. So welcome, Tom.
Hi, Jim. How are you today?
All right. Trying to survive this heat wave.
You're not melting?
I've already melted. What you see now is a figment of your imagination. So, 100 degrees today, 102 yesterday.
I thought it was 103 yesterday.
Might have been 103. It felt like it was 133. I tell you, the heat is something else. And this is an anomaly for this time of year in Albuquerque, but it just reminds us about climate change and what it really means and how it manifests itself.
It was hotter in my sister-in-law's territory. It was close to, 110 degrees in Billings, Montana.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Good grief. And my poor niece just traveled from Denver, Colorado to Phoenix, Arizona, just in time for 116-degree temperatures. You know, I really feel for her as well. But like I said, 103, 110, 116, it all comes down to the same thing. Well, in the news today, Melanie Stansbury is sworn in as the new Congresswoman representing Congressional District 1 here in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County. And the mystery of it all, which we haven't been able to figure out, is why is Yvette Herrell, the right-wing racist from southern New Mexico, stepping in, getting cozy, and introducing Melanie when she brought her remarks after her swearing in today. Something's rotten there. I don't like it.
I don't know how it works. They said that she solidifies that small Democratic majority. Melanie does. So who knows why we need an obstructionist Republican butting her head into this process and protocol.
Yeah, and especially Yvette Herrell. You know, she's right up there with the rest of the Trumpers, and that's not healthy for New Mexico. It's not even healthy for the country.
No. I don't know. What do we have coming up on the program?
So, coming ahead, we've got your favorite episode, Good News. And we've got a wonderful recording today with Darleen Hudson, who's the founder of the Hudson Lord Breakfast, named in honor of Bayard Rustin, who was the architect of the Civil Rights Movement. And she's been doing this for 20 years along with her colleagues, and she's got some really important insight for us there.
And we have an interview on public banking. We talked a little bit about that when we talked about the legalization of marijuana in New Mexico and why we desperately need public banking in New Mexico.
We desperately need it here, especially with the marijuana laws that are going into effect next year. It's going to make a difference in terms of how commerce operates. Also, we expect to have some incredible music by Dee Brown, who's a local musician. I've heard him play on many occasions. One of the places under the best of circumstances you'd find him is over at the old firehouse on Central on a Thursday night. He just lights up the house. And so we're glad that we're going to have him here this evening.
And we're going to debut a brand new feature called the Peace Center Corner. I'll be interviewing Jennifer. Jennifer is a volunteer here, and what is her committee?
Jennifer Miskin-Flake chairs the Committee on Prisons and Immigration and has done an incredible job of organizing and pulling people together around issues of prisons and immigration. So that's our lineup.
Thank you, Jim, and welcome to Good News News. I'm your correspondent, Hasani Olujimi, and I'm Gugu for Good News. The goal of this segment is to inspire and uplift you, the viewer, with nothing but good news. So let's jump right in, shall we? Our first story reads like this. The USDEA finally allows companies to grow their own cannabis for scientific research. The Drug Enforcement Administration has just ended what's been described as a 52-year-old monopoly on growing cannabis for research purposes. Several large-scale company growers have now been awarded contracts to produce weed for federal research. A move that will hopefully go a long way towards proving what many state and foreign governments already know, that cannabis has a powerful property, particularly for pain management. However, on May 14th, the DEA quietly announced it would soon register additional entities authorized to produce marijuana for research purposes. Award-winning journalist Bruce Williams says, "We don't know when, but we need this research urgently. We can quickly start growing and have a supply for researchers to get good data." Isn't that good news? Hey, follow the science or follow the smoke. Moving right along. Pride Month occurs in the United States to commemorate the Stonewall Riots, which occurred at the end of June 1969. As a result, many Pride events are held during the month of June to recognize the impact LGBTQ plus people have had on the world. Well, today I want to share with you one of my Black gay heroes and his contributions to our country and the world. I present to you a snippet of Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin was born in Westchester, Pennsylvania, March 17, 1912. In 1963, A. Philip Randolph asked Rustin to help him organize a massive march on Washington for jobs and freedom to mark the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. Rustin's left-wing past and sexual identity made him a controversial figure for many of the more conservative members of the coalition Randolph wanted to bring together. Bayard Rustin was never quiet about his homosexuality. The March on Washington is most often remembered as the setting for Dr. King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech, but it also helped secure passage for the Civil Rights Act of 1963 and the Voting Rights Act of 1964. In 1987, Bayard Rustin interviewed with the Village Voice. He's quoted as saying, "I think the gay community has a moral obligation to do everything possible to encourage more and more gay people to come out of the closet." Bayard Rustin also worked hard to bring the AIDS crisis to the attention of the NAACP. He once predicted that the barometer for human rights in the United States were Black people. That's no longer true, he says. The barometer for judging the character of people in regard to human rights is now those who consider themselves gay, homosexual, or lesbian. Bayard Rustin died August 24, 1987. Here are two of my favorite Bayard Rustin quotes. The first one says this: "The organizers and perpetrators of segregation are as much the enemy of America as a foreign invader." My number one quote is this: "When an individual is protesting society's refusal to acknowledge his dignity as a human being, his very act of protest confers dignity for him." Thank you, Bayard Rustin, for paving the way for so many of us. We really do appreciate you. We won't let your death or your work be in vain. Now, let's check in with our favorite sassy grandmother, Little Big Mama. Little Big Mama, What do you have in store for us today, lady?
Thank you, Hasani. I just want you to know that I bought one of those iPad, Apple, PC, tablet thingamabobs. And they told me that I was going to need a password 8 characters long. So I chose Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Well, before I go, I will tell you this story about my husband, the good bishop. He likes to come into the bathroom when I'm curling my hair or brushing my teeth or something, you know. And so the other day he asked me, "Can you hand me some chapstick?" I accidentally handed him a glue stick. It's been a week now and he still ain't talking to me. Now ain't that good news? Well, you take care, baby. Bye.
Thank you, little Big Mama. We appreciate you. The best way to turn a frown upside down is to get goo-goo for good news. I'm your correspondent, Hasani Olujimi, featuring Little Big Mama. And we'll see you right here next time on That Saturday Show with more good news.
We're back with That Saturday Show, and we are continuing our coverage and observance of International Pride Month. And we are so pleased that on this particular occasion, we are focusing on African American LGBTQ SGL, that means same gender loving, accomplishments in both the broader civil rights struggle as well as the LGBTQ SGL struggle itself, and honoring the accomplishments and the contributions of two people in particular. Bayard Rustin, who we know was the architect of the 1963 March on Washington and so many more things that he contributed, and the incredible writer and philosopher Audre Lorde. And honoring these two so significant contributors to our struggle has been the Rustin Lorde Breakfast, which is now 20 years old, I believe. And the architect, founder, mover and shaker behind the Rustin Lorde Breakfast in Atlanta, Georgia, is my dear friend, my good sister, Darleen Hudson. Darleen, welcome to That Saturday Show.
Thank you, Brother Jim, for inviting me to participate.
Oh, it's so great to have
you. Thank you so much.
So Darleen, you've been doing this work. You've been in this struggle for a long time, and so just talk to us a little bit about what got you in and where you've been headed.
Again, Jim, thanks for inviting me in to allow me to kind of share some of my experiences and kind of give reference to a couple of events and their significance as it relates to what I call the broader movement of bringing people together in what I call the beloved community.
Absolutely.
Okay? We bring people together. And thus began the Bayard Rustin Breakfast. And it started out as the Bayard Rustin Breakfast. And it was created out of a seed of desire to bring people together. That was the basis of our seed, of how we wanted to begin. And I'm going to use the term "we" quite a bit because I didn't do this work by myself.
No.
Another guy, Craig Washington, was very instrumental in the development. As a matter of fact, he was here in Atlanta before I got here. And so we just made a decision that right before the MLK March that happens every MLK Day here, it's a big commemoration year with the historical services at Ebenezer, as well as there's a major march that Reverend Orange, who was a civil rights leader in the Day of King as well, he thought that he should continue the march effort to remind people, to inform people, and to give people a platform to also expose their ideals and their concepts around what I want to call like the peace movement, nonviolent movement, and how people can work together, how people, he used the word quite a bit, him and Reverend Robinson, who's in Arkansas, coalesce. It's one thing to collaborate, but to coalesce is like how we play together in the box, in the sandbox.
Absolutely.
So he thought that it was relevant to continue that. So we became a part of that committee. And I'm gonna tell you, in the beginning, we got a lot of looks and stares, and we saw other people in the room who were gay as well, but they were blending. They were themselves, but they were not out as gay people. They weren't hiding it, but they didn't try to give any kind of voice to it. So when we began to talk about the works of Bayard Rustin and the role that he played in the civil rights movement, as you put, the architect of it, had it not been Bayard Rustin, I don't think A. Philip Randolph could have pulled off the type of event, march that took place. I just don't think that it would have had the success. And he did all of that. If you note in some of the pictures, he always has like a little notepad in his hand, and he makes notes of it. And that was the beginning of the Palm Pilot, I say. the first Android was right there in his hand, using that little notepad and notebook. So our beginnings began just out of the desire to bring people together, and then to also create awareness in the larger African-American community that, hey, gay people had something to do with this civil rights movement, and it was not in a minor way, but in a major way. We honor Audre Lorde because she teaches us around the, what I call the theory of inclusion, the embracing of differences. And if we can learn those basic concepts of how to embrace each other, our differences, then from there we can begin to build, because there are connecting points. We don't approach addressing issues in the community in a singular, one-dimensional way. We have several dimensions to who we are. We have our health, we have education, I don't want to get into that too much, but we have all kind of layers of needs, finance, economic development, all of it. And she said, we just can't say this one thing is that it is above everybody else's issue in terms of importance. I hope that makes sense. She was basically teaching us that we have to be dimensional in our efforts. We have to understand issues around poor people. We have to understand how it relates to our health. We have to understand how it relates to our economic development. We have to understand, and it all connects instead of trying to do things in silos. So I like the spirit of inclusion. The women of Zami Noble brought that to us, the breakfast, because again, it started out as the Rustin Lord. And I can tell you, Jim, what started out as probably about 15, 20 people meeting before the MLK March to have coffee and maybe a donut has grown into, prior to the march, a breakfast that draws anywhere from 300 to 500 people, just depending on the space that we have.
I love it.
People come and we prepare a type of program that really, I hope, that energizes and get people to thinking about the direction they want to see our community move, especially as it relates to Black LGBT people and our allies. The room is packed. There are straight people. It's intergenerational. People come. Politicians are there. Not promoting their political agendas per se. I do think it's important that we understand what that's about. But they come so that people can get to know who they are and can develop a trust, a understanding, a type of bond to say, I can call Senator Vincent Ford and I know he will address whatever the issue is. I can call a person like Joan Garner, bless her heart, she's deceased now, but could call her and know that that commissioner will come. And we've got some people now that are at the table that are still very supportive. Our good friend Nana Robb, just these were some of the historical people who were there in the beginning. We have some great, Keisha Lance Bottom sends us a message. She's very engaged with she's a lover of Audre Lorde. So the breakfast, it's so many things that happen. I would encourage anybody to go on YouTube, just put in the Bayard Rustin Lorde breakfast, and you will see different videos about the breakfast. You'll see some of the people who we've had speaking. You'll even see us marching in the streets with our allies on MLK Day. And I guess my organizing has always been centered around, Jim, while I recognize the importance of having LGBTQ, non-gender conforming, you know the whole spiel.
All right, right.
All that we have become. In the beginning, we were just, as Fred said, this is all we got.
Right.
For years, that's all I saw was this. Didn't nobody ever call it gay. But now look at it. It's been an explosion. But at the same time, while we recognize it's been a movement, we do recognize that there's so much more room and so much more work to be done. And I'm anxious to see what the next leg of the work is going to look like. And if I can be some part of it, I'm happy to. But if I'm not, it's okay, because I've been here and I've been doing the Bayard Rustin Audre Lorde breakfast for 20 years. We celebrated our 20th year this past year in the middle of this epidemic. We did a virtual summit, a breakfast, and people actually, showed up for that event, I was just like, who's going to want to do a virtual breakfast? But the people showed up. I was wasn't no 500 people, but showed up. I was very impressed for the number of people who did participate in that breakfast. It's all on video. Part of it is on the website. That's another place people can visit to get some idea about the breakfast, is that we have, the breakfast is under what we call the Southern Unity Movement. And I hope that in the future, you're going to see some more movement down here in the South. There's a lot of things going on, but try to coordinate with what is taking place, especially as we get geared up for this next election process. Our Senator Warnock will be up for running again, and we got some, commissioners, we got some local politicians, seats and offices that are open. And so it's going to be interesting to see how we can connect, even politically, to continue to create this beloved community, to keep moving us forward. To me, it's not about all the acronyms. It's more about learning to accept people for who they are and what they bring to the table. You could be MXYZ. That's not to downplay the LGBT, but to begin to accept people and allow for who they are and let them bring what they bring to the table. Now, if you recognize you got somebody that might be not such a good fit, or as I would normally say, that's a fool, to move them on. But just to continue to bring like-minded people together in the spirit of accepting, and learning from our differences, to continue to move this beloved community to that place to where King talked about. And that's how the LGBT piece that I work on with the Bayard Rustin breakfast begins to connect back to King's vision, MLK's vision about this beloved community. Go ahead.
We're talking with Darleen Hudson, one of the founders of the Rustin Lorde Breakfast in Atlanta, Georgia. And, listening to you, Darleen, it just reminds me of how the movement overall has evolved, because, you go back and you look at the history of Bayard Rustin and the flack that he got for his sexual orientation from people within the movement, in the early years. And I'm so heartened to listen today to those people who would be civil rights and human rights leaders, Reverend Barber and the people from the NAACP, and we could go on, who, when they talk about the spirit of inclusion, they always stop to make certain that they are talking about the LGBTQ community as well. That's evolution, that's growth, that's the kind of inclusiveness. And I think that that came from work like the work that you all are doing in Atlanta. And I remember in Chicago, you know, years ago, there's a famous parade that happens every year called the Bud Billiken Day Parade in August in Chicago. And the determination and the commitment and the bravery of the Black LGBTQ activists there who said, we're going to march in this parade, and you're going to see us and you're going to acknowledge us. And now it's just there, it's done. They do it every year. And you know, and there's no cat calling, nobody complaining, nobody objecting, because that spirit of inclusiveness has taken hold. And I think that that is because of the work that's been done, you know, by folks like yourself and like Craig and others around the country that has made such a difference. And you're to be congratulated and saluted for that. You know, I take my hat off to you, and you know, it's good work. It's good work. It really is.
It's been good work, Jim. But I do feel the need to move the piece forward is to bring on people, other people, new people.
Yes.
I hate to use the word new because they're not new, but people who express an interest in this whole movement piece, that understand and get what the breakfast is really all about. It's something that takes place, Jim, when people sit down and break bread. I'm telling you, when I get to that site, and we hold it every year at the Loudermilk, and I'm hoping that this year we'll be able to do it in person, but we hold it at the Loudermilk down off of Edgewood here in Atlanta. And it just fills my heart that when I get in there and we get to setting up the room and we get everything like we want it, and when we open the door, the people just come through like it's a ray of sunshine. People are glad to see each other. People are hugging each other. People are engaging in those conversations about what are we going to do next? Who are we going to put in office? Who, you know, how are we going to address affordable health care? How are we going to talk about the housing, affordable housing in Georgia? How are we going to move this piece? And they're having these conversations amongst themselves. I've had people come back to me and say, because I attended the breakfast, I am now working on my first campaign with, you know, whoever's running. I have people come back because I attended your breakfast. I went and found the mental health services that I need just based off of what you told us we could do. Because of your breakfast, I got signed up for affordable health care. Because we have vendors who come and set up. It's for us, it's not about, you know, a charge. Of course, everything costs something, but it's about bringing all the people together so that they can engage in that dialogue, and also be inspired by the program that we present. I mean, we've done some pretty powerful programming where people were moved. And we just don't come and eat. It's not just a program. Right. This past gave us room this time. We actually engaged on that day with working with our displaced citizens, families, people who don't have homes, who are living on the street.
Right.
Working with them around a breakfast. We provided them breakfast. Instead of us buying breakfast, we provided them with breakfast this time. And we also provided them. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we've got about 30 seconds left, unfortunately. And okay. I'd really like you to just take that 30 seconds and talk about what's next for Darleen.
Well, let me say this also before what's next for Darleen in 30 seconds. I want to encourage people to get involved. You get involved on whatever level suits you. If it's even the local PTA, if it's nothing but your neighborhood association, get involved. What's next for Darleen? Jim, I'm a spirit-led woman. and wherever the Lord takes me is what I'll be engaged in. I have some idea that it may be some things in the political sense of being supportive of those candidates, and turning the next page for the breakfast. When I turn it, it's time for somebody else to pick up the pen and go to writing. And so I want to be a part of kind of nurturing people who are coming on board, who need that kind of historical grounding to understand where it come from, so they can better understand where they need to move it to. I hope that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Yes.
Get in where you fit in, Jim. This year will be my 60th birthday, so I'm wondering too, what's next?
Right.
So, Jim, thank you again. It's so great to be here. I hope that I didn't ramble on too much. There were all kind of things I wanted to talk about, but when you talk about the breakfast, that's something that's very special to me. So,
well, we'll come back and we'll do this again, and we'll pick up on all those other things, because all these years that you've been doing this work, you've got a lot of wisdom stored up there in that head. And so as you approach your 60th birthday, let's get back on and do it again. We thank you so much and appreciate you for the inspiration. Darleen Hudson.
Baby.
Thank you.
So we're back.
We're back. Last week, right here at the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice, we vaccinated several people for COVID-19. We had volunteer nurses and pharmacists come in and set up a clinic. And right in the middle of our weekly food distribution program, we were able to pull people out of line, bring them in, and get them their shots. The center continues to do everything it possibly can to make certain that we join the fight to bring these numbers down and increase our vaccination numbers. So,
is the $100 incentive still going on?
Well, that just started, didn't it? And I understand that it's good. It was only good until the 17th. So let's hope some people took advantage of that. That's a good deal.
And right now, what's going on in Civic Plaza? Juneteenth is going on.
Juneteenth is happening right now. Started last night on the plaza when people came, and there was music entertainment Friday night. And all day today, there's going to be lots of activities and lots more music and information tents and all kinds of exciting and incredible things that will be happening as the city comes together for one massive Juneteenth celebration. Now, do you know what Juneteenth is? If you don't, let me just give you a quick little snippet there. Juneteenth is a celebration of the slaves in Texas, learning almost 2 years after the Proclamation had been signed that they had been freed. And so when they found out, they called it Juneteenth. And the reason they called it Juneteenth is because they really weren't sure whether it was June 17th, 18th, 19th. So they just settled on Juneteenth, and June 19th, tends to be the universal day that people celebrate. And they celebrated, and I'm going to be looking, when I get out on the plaza today, I'm going to be looking to see if anybody's got roasted goat and red soda water, because those are the things that they celebrated Juneteenth with. So I'm looking for roasted goat and red soda water.
And that Saturday show should be filming a lot of it. Hopefully we'll have a couple of musical acts and some interesting interviews and shots from the crowd.
Looking forward to that. We're going to get out there and get people's opinions of Juneteenth and this celebration and how they feel in general. And I think that's going to be a great piece for our next show.
And tomorrow is the first day of summer, and it's Father's Day.
Father's Day and summer solstice, right?
Yep.
All of that rolled up into one day, Sunday, June 20th. So if you're doing something for Father's Day, try to keep cool, try to be safe. Don't spend a lot of money unless you're giving it to a good nonprofit organization like the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice. It's a great place to get that in. I'm glad we are able to do that.
And Rebecca coming up with a public banking interview. What group does she represent?
Rebecca represents the statewide effort for public banking to create a state bank in New Mexico. And Rebecca Jasso-Aquilar is one of the movers and shakers behind that effort. So we're looking forward to that interview as well.
All right. Everybody have a great week. Enjoy Dee Brown. And we're going to have our little Peace Center Corner coming up as well.
Welcome back to That Saturday Show. I'm Jim Harvey, your host, and I am honored to have with us today Rebecca Jasso-Aquilar. And Rebecca is one of the activist movers and shakers that has been pushing hard for a public bank here in the state of New Mexico, something that we are finding has tremendous value and will have even more value once the legislature wakes up, passes the bill, and makes it possible for us here in New Mexico. It has great value. And so I just wanted Rebecca to tell us what happened and where do we go from here. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you very much. It's thank you for having me on the program. It's really an honor to be here and to speak to progressive and socially committed New Mexicans. Right. It's a real honor and a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes, well, I'm a member of the Alliance for Local Economic Prosperity, as you said. We are actually a small group, and I'll talk a little bit, maybe in a bit, about that being part of what we want to do, expand our membership so that we can work better. So as you all know, or you may or may not know, our bill, the Public Banking Act, was heard by the House Committee, the House Commerce and Economic Development Committee, where it passed strictly along party lines. But it passed. And it was also heard by the Appropriation and Finance Committee, where it was tabled. It was well attended in both committees. Over 80 people showed up and well supported. About 25, 30 people spoke in its favor at both hearings. I don't know if whoever was there may remember that the biggest opposition came from the community bankers. But I'll speak a little bit about that in just a minute. So we at AFLIP have decided that we are moving forward to be part of the 2022 legislative session, and the 2023 and the 2024, and as many legislative sessions as it takes
to
give
up
a state public bank for New Mexico.
That's right.
No matter how many tries it takes, we are decided. We're determined to do that. When we get into the 2023 legislative session, we are determining strategies for getting public bank funding into the 2022-23 budget, including presentations to the Interim Appropriation and Finance Committee over the summer and fall, and getting public bank legislation onto the governor's call for the 2022 short legislative session. It's another part of the team that deals with this part. I know about it because we're all informed, but I'm not the one working on these on the legislative issues. But that's the plan. We are determining strategies to get this this funding in the budget and getting the legislation onto the governor's call for the 22 legislative session. And to support these goals, we will work on expanding our outreach efforts to add more team members. You may or may not know that we're a small group, under 20 active members. We are going to look for additional allied organizations and individuals. So to each and every organization that is watching, we would love to make a virtual presentation on public banking for you. And of course, we would love to do it in person once the sanitary conditions in the state allow it. So please give us a chance to speak to you about public banking. We are going to expand our board. We want to have a board that is as diverse as New Mexico. We're looking for members from all walks of life and all parts of the state who can bring issues and ideas from their own regions. We want this public bank to be close to and grounded in people's needs. And we want New Mexicans all over the state to take ownership of this public bank, because this bank will be a New Mexicans bank. It'll be a bank that belongs to New Mexicans. We want people to take ownership of that. We will engage with more commercial businesses and business organizations. Some of the opposing voices in the hearing sessions, besides, of course, the community bankers, came from chambers of commerce. And we feel that this may be because we did not work very well at selling them, reaching out to them and selling them, so to speak, the idea and benefits of a public bank. So we're going to try to reach out to them. We will also be doing more research, collecting community development data regarding unfunded opportunities, and collecting more information on what is being funded and what is not. This research is a key component, because if you remember, the main argument of those who opposed the bill, the community bankers, was that they were handling very well all the lending needs of the state. They literally had more cash than they could lend. I think all of us here know that this is not true, that there are many funding needs that are not being addressed. So next session, when the community bankers make the same argument, we want to present a solid case to refute them. And we want to bring attention to economic justice, because when you dive deep into the issue, you realize that it is marginalized groups, the ones that most lack access to capital. So we want to make it very clear with solid data.
So you really touched on some of the important benefits of having a public bank, and so I just wanted to ask you to take a little more time and dig deeper into that, because that's where we begin to build that community support that's so necessary to push us across the finish line.
Right. Well, banks and any type of bank will look more favorably on loans that are big loans, because it takes them the same amount of time to do the paperwork for a big loan than a small loan.
Right.
So to them is not, they can get away with not making small loans, because they'll make up with making big loans. But it's the community, the small business, the little restaurant that needs just maybe $20,000, $25,000 to, I don't know, add a new stove, or, refurbish the dining area, work on publicity, things like that. I mean, some of the people that we have met, business owners, that's the range, $20,000, the amount of money that they need. And what they could do with this is tremendous. It really would make a big difference. Yet it's those small loans that cannot be obtained, cannot be, it's money that the community banks cannot be bothered with lending.
So it's the corporate bank versus the people's bank. And that's what it all comes down to, right?
Exactly. But, community banks like to present themselves as people's banks.
Oh, yeah.
You saw them, you heard them at the hearings.
Oh, yeah.
They really, they seem to think of themselves as like big banks want to be. And maybe they actually, they are bigger than what they pretend to be. They may be more regional banks than a community bank. Many of them are part of mergers, and they are not anymore just your small community bank in your community. They are part of a regional entity, and they behave like big banks.
That's the ammunition,
like you said.
And that's the kind of information.
They don't help the small. They don't help the little people. They don't help them.
Right.
Yes.
That's the kind of
And-
information we need. Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, I would love to call them out on that. Because they really portray themselves as the ones that, oh yeah, we are also feeling the pain, but we are there for the community. I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, how can you say that you have more money than you can lend when if you drive down Central, there's
Right.
lots of places that if you went and knock on their door, you realize that they are actually businesses that are open but seem closed because there's no money to refurbish them, to
Yeah.
make them more appealing.
They're
We have
struggling.
I used to I did business with a person who does the upholstery of cars. He had
Right.
an old car that needed reupholstery. He did a wonderful job, but I heard from him just because another business that I patronize, I had my oil change or my car's oil change there. He told me, you know what, if you're looking for that, there's somebody across the street, the two of them on Central between Eubank and Wyoming. And these are places that you see them and you don't even realize that they are open for business.
Right.
And I can only imagine what they could do with a little money.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so, yes, they are not there. The community banks are not there for them. A public bank will be there for them.
So Rebecca, we've got just a couple of minutes left, and let me just let you know right now that the Peace and Justice Center continues to stand firmly with you, and we'll do everything we can, to help push us across the finish line, because we know the benefits as well of having this public bank in New Mexico. And we know that we've seen, right? We're right here in Nob Hill, and we've seen the devastation. And it's
Yes.
because small businesses can't get in the front door of these so-called community banks with their commercial standards. And so we need that alternative. We need somebody who's going to demonstrate the care that's necessary, for
Exactly, Jim. Exactly. And now that you mentioned, if you just give me a few seconds, to
Sure.
all these businesses, like the ones you mentioned, please reach out to us, contact us, and let us know your story. We'll collect these stories and we'll tell them to our representatives. We'll show them the hard data. We'll tell them that we are speaking to real people with real needs that these community bankers never pay attention. And that's why we need a public bank. But we need them to tell us their story so we can tell their story.
So give us your contact information so that, and then what we'll be sure to do is put it up, on the screen later on so that everybody can see it and write it down. Because
Yes, how about if I put it on the chat? Will that
just
work?
put it on the chat and we'll take it from there. Sure.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you the website for AFLEP, and then I'm gonna give you my personal email.
Terrific.
Yes,
Terrific.
so that's www.aflep.org, and then my name and my email. And I will be happy to come to your business and speak to you and hear your story and collect them and make sure that our representatives hear them.
We're going to have a full-throated discussion just for you. And like I said, we're going to get everybody together that we can. And as we push towards January 2022, we want to make certain that there are no glitches and that this bill gets passed.
Thank you so much. We need all the help we can get, and it will be transformational. It really is one of those transformational bills.
Rebecca Jasso-Aquilar, thank you so much for joining us on that Saturday show. And here's to a successful campaign to get public banking in New Mexico, which we all would benefit from. Thanks so much again, Rebecca.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, we're back. This is Tom Dent, and we're introducing a new segment, a quick segment on that Saturday show called the Peace Center Corner. With me today is Jennifer Miskin-Flake. Jennifer's been our Tuesday morning volunteer for almost a year here, and she's chair of the Prison and Immigration Commission. Jennifer, you want to talk about that and about the event you have coming up this week?
Yeah. So we are the Prison and Immigration Committee of the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice. And we are involved in a lot of things that relate to service and advocacy and reform, reimagining. We're trying to touch all the bases as we go along. We're new, so we're still developing. And we need you. So if you want to connect with me, if you want to engage with the community on either or both of those issues, please contact me. We need more people. But we do have a very special event coming up this Wednesday, June 23rd. It's a virtual event. You will need to register on Zoom. Hopefully we'll be able to have some showing of where that would go. But it's called Albuquerque Gathers for the 11 Million. And it is an event to support and raise awareness and calls to action for the 11 million undocumented residents in the United States who are our family and our friends and our neighbors. They are home and they just need a just, accessible path for documentation. And we may touch on other immigration issues as well that evening. There will be music, poetry, kind of making it a nice, beautiful evening where we can gather. And so looking forward to that. It starts at 6:30. Yeah, you just need to register for Zoom and show up. And
can they call the Peace Center for details?
Yeah, I'll make sure that there's details.
Okay.
That main thing is getting the Zoom registration.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can we put a little event notification on our Peace and Justice Facebook page?
Yep, they'll be on the front page probably a little bit later this week. There'll be a poster on the front page. Yep.
Great. Please get involved. It's a worthy cause. We need to defund and empty out our prisons of many people.
Yes, we need to.
Many people that shouldn't be there.
There's many pieces to the puzzle, community building, different responses to crisis and harm, and of course to reinvent the way that we welcome people who come from other countries. And yeah, there's lots to do.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for kicking off this important segment. Hopefully we'll have this every week on that Saturday show.
Child, and don't you cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Move on up towards your destination. You might find from time to time complication. Bite your lip, take a trip. There may be a wet road ahead and you cannot slip. Just move on up, more peace you'll find. Into the steeple of beautiful people where there's only one kind. Your folks might understand you by and by. Just move on up, keep on wishing. Remember your dream is your only scheme, so keep on pushing. Take nothing less than the second best. Not obey what people say, you can pass a test. Just move on up to a greater day. Just a little faith, if you put your mind to it, you can surely do it. Yeah.